Are there any questions so far on what I told you? The camera updates, UHD recording, SUP 1.1, what's new? No?
Would there be any other codecs, like smaller codecs, like HSPX, ABC?
We are looking at different recording codecs. At this point, we don't see that it's that necessary. Most post houses we've talked to, or not just post houses, but also TV stations that we've talked to, so far have found it to be sufficient if they use AMA linking to get into the Avid environment, for example. And then if they don't want to handle the bandwidth, then they just record in ProRes 422, so not even the highest quality. And during ingest, they just convert it to, I don't know, XDCam or something else. So for most houses that where we've shown the workflow, how you can ingest that, it's an okay solution, I would say. And now that UHD also is on board, the question is if, for example, XDCam HD is really a good choice for a codec, whereas most of our competitors go in a different direction and use MPEG-4 coding and higher codecs that are compatible with higher resolution as well. So we're looking into that. I haven't decided what we do at this point.
One more?
Yeah.
AMIRA's dynamic range, how much step and you highlight how much for the shadow line as a sim like pixel.
Yes.
Is
If you're
the same.
yes, also the range goes between 160 and 3200.
Yeah.
And when you are exposing for 800 ASA, you get approximately 7 some stops, 7.2, 7.3 stops on top, and 7 stops below. So you're pretty much in the center of it. That's why we always say the base rating is 800 ASA. But if you expose it for 1600, that means you're rating it more sensitive, so you give less light on the sensor, and physically you have one more highlight step.
Another, if we should use the Alexa mix the AMIRA, use the ProRes 444 like this, is the quality, the image is almost the same. I don't need to make some
adjustments.
Yes.
No, you don't. Okay, so the sensor in the camera is the same on AMIRA and Alexa. Aleph 3 is the generation of it. It's just that in the AMIRA camera, it's a newer revision. So it's little technical improvements, but in general, the cells are the same. The dyes, the color dyes that we use on the sensor are the same. So the colorimetry of the sensor is identical. So when you compare the two, they're the same sensor.
Oh, yeah.
They look the same. In terms of what you can record, they're not the same. That's an old slide. So this is now ProRes up to UHD. This would be, 3.4K, that's true. In terms of formats, they're also not quite compatible. So if you are in an anamorphic shoot, then you would preferably have 2 4x3 sensors rather than these two next to each other. If you compare what they're outputting, log C is absolutely identical. So you have the same tonal balance, the same gradation, you have the same color output. The color processing inside the camera, however, is slightly different because the AMIRA can now use 3D lookup tables, whereas the Alexa uses its own internal color processing. So it's a different chain. The processing steps are in a little bit different order after each other. For that reason, the standard or the default 709 output is not identical between the two. So if we compare that, maybe I turn down the light again. I don't know, maybe I can dim. Let me try that. Nope. Okay. So if we compare the two, this is Alexa 709, and this is AMIRA 709, you can see they're very close, but in the blue and the reds you see a slight difference, and also if you compare the gray ramp, they're also slightly different there. So this is the difference you're going to experience when you have the two cameras next to each other, but only for monitoring in Rec 709. The log-C is the same. So if you give the log-C material, recorded material to your colorist, they don't have to deal with these differences. Okay, so that's just because of the color processing chain. Also, the AMIRA provides a look that's called X2 Alexa. I'm going to turn the light back on, so because we don't really need it off. X2 Alexa, or crossover to Alexa. That's what it stands for. And what that does is it applies a 3D lookup table that actually matches the Alexa output, so you don't see that difference. But for that, you need a premium version of the AMIRA. So at this stage, we could dive into the look topic. Are you ready to go, or do you want to take a 5-minute break? No? Okay, so we can go straight ahead. So just a short recap. What we record in the camera is usually log-C. Log-C is a flat gamma curve, helps us to maintain all the highlights, and gives us the full freedom in terms of color manipulations. Rec 709 is the standard curve for an HD monitor. Rec 709, that name will be soon replaced by BT 2020, so that's what you're going to hear in the future, and that's for the UHD displays. Essentially, what it means is this is a video output curve, whereas log-C is a data output curve that's made to capture as much information as possible. If you compare the two, you would see something like that. So you have a scene where you have a bright sky, and in video output, the trees, the little limbs in the trees, they would just be clipped away, so you can't see that. Whereas when you capture log-C, you can always get that back. Of course, you don't watch log-C. Log-C is not for output, the final output on your screen. The image still needs to be converted to the video world, but you have more controls over these areas. You can bring down the contrast in these areas and get back the foliage or the definition close to the white clipping point. So to go from log-C to Rec 709, we have to do 2 steps. In the Alexa, it's done with a so-called 1D LUT, which takes care of the contrast, which is here. This is what you see here. And the second step, it's a color space conversion, which if you look at this color here, this is where it's not so prominent, but you can see something happening in between the two in terms of color. One is a little bit more saturated in one color and less saturated in the other. So we need to do a color space conversion because the camera has certain RGB values that it sees because of the color dyes on the sensor itself. So let's say you take a picture of a Coke can, then it has a certain red value for the camera. And if you take those red values and display them on a projector or on a TV screen, because the TV screen or the projector, they use their own RGB values to mix colors. If you just take the red value from the camera and put it straight onto the camera, from the camera and put it straight onto the screen, it's not going to look correct. You'll have a red that's slightly off. So for that reason, we need to transform from camera color space to display color space. So this can be done with a color matrix, and that's the second step that we do. In the Alexa, we do it, like I said, with a 1D LUT and a color matrix. In the AMIRA, we now have a 3D LUT that does the same thing. So it's a little bit more complex body to deal with in the camera, but it gives you more freedom afterwards, especially because of how you can integrate the camera into a post-production workflow. So if you compare the look files of AMIRA and Alexa, they're not the same. On the Alexa, from the log-C, you could only adjust RGB offsets, just do some primary grading. Then you'd have a 1D LUT that does the contrast adjustment for video. During that, you can apply a saturation, and at the very end, when the signal already is basically in Rec 709, that's where you were able to adjust lift gamma gain. So with these controls, you were not able to bring back the leaves against a white sky, or a wall socket on a white wall or something if there's bright light on it. In the AMIRA now we have the full CDL part on the log C, so we moved it from the very end to the very beginning of the processing chain. So you have slope offset power controls. We're going to look at these in a second. Then you have, as a second step, either video look parameters, so you can control the Rec 709 transformation, or you can load in a 3D lookup table from a colorist. So a colorist can prepare a 3D lookup table to create a certain artistic output, or also to go into different color spaces. So you can provide a conversion LUT for Rec 709 video, or for P3 for projection, or even into the ACES color space.
And what are you going to see in the viewfinder?
The viewfinder will see the look file that you apply.
Okay.
So technically, the best way would be a Rec 709 output.
Can you separate it from the SDI?
No, it's the same look. The camera has one look, and you can either set the viewfinder, the HD SDI output, or the recording, right? There's a third one. These three you can select between log C output or look output. And if your look is a creative one, then you're going to see that on every output where you turn it on.
You cannot separate it like
No. Like where?
the viewfinder, the normal log C.
Yes, you can have log C in the viewfinder and
The
a Rec 709 output on, or LUT output on the monitor.
Is
That's
it new?
no,
An update one thing, or
no. That's been from the beginning.
couldn't get it?
It's always there. So if you go in the camera menu, which I would love to show you over the screen, but I didn't dare doing the update during the showreel. If you go into the look menu, then set gamma, here I have a selection for recording, SDI and monitor. And for the recording, typically you would be log C, and the rest would be set to look. So, and look being Rec 709 would give you a standard video or default video signal. Okay. Yeah, so this is essentially the chain shown as it happens in the camera. We take sensor data, apply white balance, and then we have log C. Up to there, it's the same, Alexa or AMIRA. And then in the AMIRA, we have the look settings coming after that with separated in a CDL in the 3D lookup table. So this is how it's created. Okay. In the camera, you have a page where you can actually apply a look by dialing it in, but it's rather cumbersome. So you can use that page. I recommend to only do it to add some contrast, or maybe make an image a little bit cooler or warmer, but it's not something that you would typically do inside the camera. A better option is to use our AMIRA color tool, and that's a free software that you can download from our website, and that allows you to create a look file. So 25 frames per second, that's what we see here right now. It's a little bit bright, so I have to put in ND filters. The camera has motorized ND filters, 0.6, 1.2, or 2.1 that you can put behind the lens, so you don't get any reflection. It's a full spectrum ND filter. That means even with 2.1, let's use 2.1 and open up, you don't get any infrared spill. Often you have that when you're using standard ND filters, and you go above 1.2, and you get these blacks that turn red in your image. That won't happen with the internal ones. You can, of course, combine the internal filter with an external, and then again it's the same. If the external filter is more than 1.2, and if it's not an IR-ND filter in that case, you will get a slight tint in the image. So I adjust the white balance a little bit. Let's do an automatic. No, let's do daylight white balance. Sensitivity going to 800. Open up a little bit. Okay. So I can now record 3 clips or 2 clips. First of all, I'm going to record a clip with a standard 709 look. Just a few seconds. Okay, next I'm going to record a clip with a log C contrast curve. Okay, now these 2 clips I can take into my laptop. The cards that I'm recording on are standard CFast 2.0 cards. I know you're probably all familiar with that, right? So these are quite fast SATA standard cards that go up to 350 megs per second for recording. So that allows us to go 200 frames per second without a buffer, which is quite nice. So, nicht gespiegelt. There we go. Okay. You can see what I can see? Yes. Okay, so this is what a card looks like when I get it from the camera. It's called A001 R426 in that case, right? So A001 means it's an A camera. I can give it an index letter, A, B, C, D. 001 means it's the real number 1, first real that's been recorded. If I put in another card, it's 002, 3, and so on. R426 means actually R is a remainder from the Alexa. R and L you can set for right eye and left eye. So if you want to use an AMIRA in a 3D movie, you can do so. 426 is the serial number of the camera encoded. So if I look into my cards now, these are the 2 clips I recorded. And in QuickTime Player, you can see this is standard Rec 709. You can see it on the German flag, nice colors. And if I go to log C, everything looks dull and gray. But you can already recognize a slight difference also in the cloud. In the clouds. Okay, next to that, I have an ALE file, just to show you what that is. ALE is an Avid log exchange file, and that contains, let me try something here. There we are. Very good. So in this ALE file, we keep information about the recorded format. So here you see the 2 clips, right, that we recorded. The duration, the input-output time codes, recorded codec, audio recording, resolution. That's a UUID, it's a unique identifier for the clip. So it's also to identify it later on. If you have several clips with the same name, for example, you could still distinguish them by the UUID. Then we have information for the used firmware. So 10015 is the current release firmware. The clip was recorded 709, the next one 56. White balance was 5000 Rec 709, the other one was log C. White balance was 5600. The look that was used on the viewfinder or on the HDSDI output is Rec 709.aml. That's the AMIRA look file. This is burnt in, or this is actually embedded in the clip, so I can always get that back. Yes, no means was the look recorded. 25 frames per second, 180-degree shutter, camera model, and so on. So there's a whole bunch of metadata that's actually included in the camera. You can also put in the name of the cinematographer and the production and so on. So you can also store that. So, okay, just to show you what this is. That's all in the ALE file. And all that information is also embedded in every clip. Now we have a free tool, AMIRA Color Tool, as I said at the beginning. And here what I can do, I can open my clips. And the first one, if I open it, it shows me that it has a burnt-in look. No modifications are allowed. Because that's recorded in Rec 709, I can't do anything about it. That's what it is. If I look at my second clip, it's been recorded in log C, flat and gray. I can now have look controls. So I have these dials here, and they allow me to adjust slope, offset, power. So typical colorist controls. And also I have video parameters. These control the conversion from log C, from the camera color space and the camera's contrast characteristic over to Rec 709. Or I can use 3D LUT, and in that case it would load a 3D. I could load a 3D LUT that a colorist provides. So what I can do now is I could, for example, make the image a little bit more contrasty. Right, I could push the blues a little bit. I don't know. Don't know if that really shows. So I can create something like a look and file, save as, bring that on my USB stick. If it shows up, here's my stick. AMIRA. So this is the standard file structure on my USB stick on the ARRI sticks. It's always ARRI AMIRA or ARRI Alexa, and then in there you're going to find frame lines, grabs, and so on. So look files. This is where I want to have more blue. So this is one look I have in there. I also have some other examples. Let's just see which one works nice. Film style tobacco is always something interesting. Right, so let's use this here, for example, and save low key. Certainly not meant for this type of scene, but anyway. Okay, so I have that on my stick.